So what are some of the cool season vegetables that we can plant right now?
Well, pretty much your cold crops, that'd be your cabbage, your broccoli, your collards, lettuce, your green onions, all of those kind of things, spinach, all of that can be planted now.
Okay.
I mean, I'm just excited.
Are you ready to go? I can tell you're ready to go.
Yes, yes.
All right, now before we get started with this, how do you prepare the soil for your transplants?
Well, what I always do, I always till it up, and I always like to form a ridge up in which to plant to provide the drainage. And I like to add my compost and sand and all that to get that good tilth in the soil. That's a good, $100 word there, tilth. And, that just gets everything ready to go. And a lot of times I'll even take my fertilizers, and I'll spread those in there and just getting everything incorporated in and tilled up or whatever, and it's just ready to go.
Okay. Okay. Now, what if we were going to plant peas, for instance? How do we go about doing that? Peas and some of those green crops.
Some of the green crops. Now, one thing I do with green crops a lot of times, I tend to sow them.
Okay.
I like to sow them, but some people plant them in rows, and that's fine as well. Also, again, with the peas, you want to get your soil ridged up, so to speak, and then you're going to come in there and you're going to plant. I'm going to probably say you're going to plant about 3 inches apart, per plant is what you're going to do with those peas. You're going to close them up. You're going to plant at a depth of about, I'll say about a 1/2 inch.
Okay.
Ought to get you and get the rains or irrigate and off to the races.
Okay. Now, what are some of those cultural things we need to do to get those transplants ready?
Well, one thing you can do is think about it. These plants, they've been raised in the greenhouse. They're nice and comfortable there at about 70 degrees or so. And now all of a sudden we're going to put them out here and, we're going to kick them out of the house, so to speak. And so I like to see them kind of transform. Maybe if you have a cold box, a cold frame, I should say, you can put them in there for a week or so. But put them out in the garage, for a week or so to let them just kind of transition into that comfortable, 45, 50 degree weather, so it won't be such a shock when you put them out there when they must survive on their own. Okay,
makes sense. Now, aren't some cool season vegetables more sensitive to colder weather than others?
Yes, basically, some of them I would probably say something like carrots. They're a little bit, they can't take just extreme cold, so you may want to plant them about 2 weeks before the frost-free date, the freeze-free date. But things like, cabbage is very hardy. It can take it. You can plant that a little earlier. So it just kind of depends. Read your labels on your vegetables to make sure and kind of know your area. Contact your extension office, and obviously we can kind of tell you what works in that area.
Okay, well, let's get to the demo. Let's show folks how to go about planting some of their cool season vegetables. Okay,
well, again, I would like for you to envision this as kind of ridged up, so to speak, that's how we like to do it. And let's plant some onions first. Everybody just really love, and what you do, you just kind of come in there and what I do, I plant mine like 3 inches apart. Let me get some of them up here, just a few. And you just set them off in there. Just put them off in there. Take them down there about maybe, I guess I'm going about 3 inches there, covering it up. And and you're talking about something that can make some turnip greens good later on. It's going to be good. And that's just the way you can do those, and that'll be fine. Here we have some spinach.
Oh, spinach.
And, Popeye would like that, obviously. And what we'll do with that, once again, we'll ridge up real nice. And what I like to do is just come in here and I always just kind of pinch the bottoms, just kind of squeeze them up, so to speak. There we go. And kind of tear them. I always like to, they say tickle the roots. And you plant these about 6 inches apart. Here's another one.
Now, do you ever put the labels?
Yes, yes.
Kind of next to the row where you're going to be planting that particular?
Oh, yes, definitely. Let me go about 6 inches there. I always tend to put my labels here because I can't remember anything anymore. Let me plant one more of those. And again,
That looks good. Wow.
Oh, man,
Like
that-
you've done this a time or two.
Oh, I've
right?
done this quite a bit.
Now, Mr. Vogus, do you plant vegetables?
No, I don't. I haven't planted vegetables in several years.
Okay.
I used to do some vegetable gardening, but I plant trees now.
Okay, oh, you're a tree guy.
Yeah. He's bigger game.
Walter, I have a question.
Yes, sir.
I noticed that the onions, most of them had the growth already coming out on them. What if I had an onion that, say, I really couldn't tell which end is up? How do I tell which end is up?
Well, really, the best way that you can do that is if you look for the little root end, so to speak, somewhere it's going to
Okay,
show that.
okay, I see.
And then you can, you just plant it based upon that. Okay. Yeah, so that's a great question.
Yeah, that's a good question.
That's a real good question. Let's say here's some cabbage.
Okay.
I'll just set that aside. And again, the cabbage is a little bit different. We want to go about 18 inches apart. So again, we're going to get in here. We're going to tickle our roots a little bit. Now, some people will sprinkle fertilizer off in there with it, but to give you an idea how far to space these out, I've done it so much I about know. This here would give you, that's about, well, maybe about right in here. I would say it's probably a good 18 inches there. Let's see, while we're at it, cauliflower.
Cauliflower. How about
Yes. Again, I'll offset this a little bit and ridge it up. Don't forget, tickle your roots.
that? All right.
And put that one right in there.
Now, do you plant some of these particular plants in your own garden at home?
Oh, yes.
Okay.
Uh-huh.
So
Yes,
the lettuce, okay.
Yes. Cabbage.
Cabbage.
I'm a big cabbage eater. I just love cabbage. Again, put that in there. And also, some people ask me how far between rows to plant your garden. 36 inches.
Okay.
Traditionally, it was 38 inches.
Okay.
And the reason that it was 38 inches was because in farming practices, that's how many inches you needed for a mule to get through the garden.
How about that?
Yes, that's why.
That's why.
And then, of course, broccoli again. Broccoli is another one.
Yeah.
Plant about 18 inches apart. And again, just set that in there and put that up there like that.
In there.
And then we'll get another one here.
Okay. And while you're doing that, let me ask you this last question.
Yes,
What about
sir.
the frost date?
Okay. Well, I'll be honest with you. Here in this area in the Mid-South, what I did, I kind of looked at and kind of averaged out.
Okay.
March 28th is a very, very important date because in the Mid-South area, you have a 50% chance of a freeze, according to weather statistics that's been kept over the last, I think they keep them 7 years or something along that line. So at that date, you have a 50% chance for a freeze. Now, obviously, it goes down after that date, but it stays up before that date.
Okay.
So just kind of keep that in mind and do a little math and know when to plant. And once again, make sure when you plant, stick these at the end so that you'll know what you planted.
Walter, we appreciate that demo.
Oh,
right.
well, thank you.
No problem.